Hi, guys. Thank you so much for coming to the Let It Go, Flow, and Grow podcast. Not gonna lie, I'm a little peeved because I don't know what is going on with my computer, but my computer will just randomly shut on and off from the internet. And so I just did a whole introduction and it ended up getting deleted because my internet just shut off in the middle of me talking. So that was fun. So now I have to go back into it and remember what I was talking about. Okay, so this week I'm going to be talking about psychedelic mushrooms. I'm going to be talking about um, the history behind them, the benefits of them with your brain, and how to properly use them. And maybe a couple of anecdotes from my own life with them. But first off, I wanted to tell you guys about what I've been going through this week and what I've been learning about myself. And I guess I will try to make it shorter and hopefully my internet does not shut off again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. But yeah, so let's see. Okay, so this week I have been working through finding validation through other people's opinion of me, specifically in romantic partners, but also just in general. And I've kind of realized, I mean, I've been working on this for a couple years now. And this has been a huge cycle for me because it started whenever I was like, I don't know, like 6 years old, maybe 8 years old. And this was a big root of like my people pleasing, why I would try to please others because I wasn't getting the proper validation at home, and feeling like I was walking on eggshells, not only at home, but also in my schooling, and just feeling like basically I had to be perfect. And if I was not perfect, then I was not worthy of love. And so I always had to prove myself as being worthy of love because I wasn't getting the proper validation at home. So I would try to find that proper validation through other people. And that would come through people pleasing. And whenever I was like doing the inner work with my 8-year-old self, what that part of me explained to me is just like whenever I did move in with my grandparents and my two older half brothers, basically I felt like my second oldest brother did not like me. And I wrote like, I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable because I didn't choose to come here. Um, but that was kind of, I guess, the beginning of it. And I'm not like blaming him or anything. I'm just saying, like, that was like really whenever I can remember me, I don't know, doing people pleasing. I guess it even started prior to that, and just like making myself small, because I was blamed for a lot of things growing up, even before like even whenever I was 6 years old, like I was being blamed for actions that my father was taking. Like my father stole from my uncle, and then I was like blamed for that. And like being beaten. Sorry, trigger warning. Like being beaten and abused, and like all these things, and like walking on eggshells, and like making sure that I was saying the proper thing so that I wouldn't get beaten. And that was like, kind of whenever I guess the people pleasing started, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. um, and trying to just be a perfectionist and realizing that later on, now that I'm older, that I feel like if I don't do something right on the first time, then how can I prove that I am worthy of love? How can I be accepted? How can I make sure that these people won't like the people that I care about won't abandon me unless I do something perfectly on the first try? And so that's kind of where that people pleasing came in, the perfectionist came in, and just finding validation outside of me. And so I've really been working on self love and doing things out of self love. Like, another big thing is that whenever I was younger or in my teenage years, or even preteen years, I would start trying to find validation through boys. So I really wanted boys to like me because I guess that was like the easiest validation to find. Um, Trying to find it through romantic partners. And then that just kind of snowballed through life. I remember with the very last partner that I had prior to the one that I'm with now, I just remember thinking, this is better than being alone. This is better than being alone. Even if he treats me like absolute garbage, this is better than being alone. Um, because I wasn't able to find that validation through myself. And I would cling on to any validation that I could find, even if the person just was absolutely horrible to me. Um, and so, yeah, that's something that I've been working through is just like finding that validation through myself, like looking myself in the eyes in the mirror and being like, I love you. And no matter what you do or what you have done or what you will do, I will always love you unconditionally. And calming my nervous system down. And yeah, just doing things out of self love versus trying to improve myself or be perfect. Um, and finding that love as well and that validation through God as well, and realizing that, He sees me by my true nature, not by what everyone else classifies me as. And that is something that I should realize is that I'm not all these horrible things that I've been told that I am, or even that I've thought that I am, because I really have grown and I really have healed. Um, and I'm going to continue to do so and help other people do the same and stop worrying about taking up too much space, because for a long time I played possum. And that's basically whenever I would pretend like I was dumber than I was or pretend like I was smaller than I was. So that way I could make sure that I didn't piss off the people around me. Um, Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. That's something that I learned how to do whenever I was much younger because I realized how big my energy is and how big my light is and how people like to stay asleep, and that's okay. Like before you really spiritually awaken, you're kind of just walking around like a zombie in a slumber, and that's not a bad thing. Um, but it's just the reality of it. And whenever you have a really, really bright light and people want to sleep, they don't like that. And also, you're probably gonna scare whatever darkness they're carrying with them. And that darkness will not like the light and they will figure out who you are very quickly, maybe even before you realize how powerful you are and the knowledge that you hold. And so, for a very long time, all these people have not liked me just from like me walking in the room. And it's just like something that I'm like used to at this point. But what I would do is like I said, I would play possum. So I would try to make myself small or be like, I'm so sorry for like making you uncomfortable just by existing. And I finally have gotten to a point where I'm just like, I don't need to apologize for shit. I literally have been through hell and back. I deserve to exist in all the spaces that I walk into. And it doesn't even have to be like you went through all this stuff. It's just like, I know, and I finally accept the fact that I have grown enough. I have healed enough. I have been through enough that I deserve to be anywhere and everywhere that I step foot into. I deserve to exist in peace. And so do you. And so, yeah, I stopped playing possum and I took my mask off and I was like, you know what? I know that I have big energy and I know that I'm powerful and I don't need to worry about making myself feel small or put myself in a box just so that way I can make other people feel more comfortable and make them feel less, I don't know, intimidated. Um, like I know that I'm cool and I know that I'm authentic and I know that I'm beautiful and I know that I'm all these things and I'm tired of walking around pretending like I'm not and listening to these other people who don't even like themselves and are trying to make me not like myself because they want to project the fact that they don't like themselves. And so I've kind of just gotten to a point, like my best friend Jenny told me, is just like there comes a point in your journey where you have to start practicing what you're preaching or like putting your lessons that you've been learning into actual practice versus just learning the same lesson over and over and over again. So I've been trying to do that, and just realizing that it all comes down to self love. It all comes down to self acceptance. And I need to do things for me instead of doing them for other people. Like, for example, going to the gym, I don't need to do that to improve my body for other people or attention from my partner. I need to do that for myself because it makes like me happy and it makes me feel good about myself and it makes me feel like that's an act of self love because it is. And I feel like packaging things in that light of doing things out of self love and not feeling bad for doing things for me, thinking of them as quote unquote selfish being selfish is okay sometimes, as long as it's not just over consuming of your life. But I feel like our entire lives by society, we've been told that being selfish at all is not okay, and that self care is not okay, and all these things, and that we're being, like I was talking to my friend Katie, being rewarded for being exhausted and not taking care of ourselves. And that's something that I've really, really have worked on for the past like 3 years. Yeah, like 3 years. Um, so yeah, that's what I've been going through this week. I mean, I've been going through that for a couple of years now. And it's not finding my validation through others, not being scared of rejection. And yeah, hopefully that helps someone. It's still something that like I need to like really have it click into place, because with the dreams that I have, it's going to make people uncomfortable. And I'm going to have a lot of people telling me, yeah, you can't do that. You can't reach your dreams, blah, 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 blah. Like I still have that voice in the back of my head telling me that there are certain dreams that I will never be able to accomplish, because that is what society has programmed me to be. And then I have my true self being like, you can do anything that you set your mind to. And I agree with that. So, yeah, stepping into my power. So, yeah, let's get into the rest of the episode. Okay, fun fact of the week. Did you know? And I used this one the last time I think I did this episode, so maybe you do know. Did you know that Japan used an intelligent slime mold back in 2010 to create a layout for the subway system in Tokyo? Basically, a team of engineers put the intelligent slime mold in a petri dish with food particles that pinpointed the high traffic areas in the city. And after a few days, the slime mold built an even more efficient way to lay out the trains than they had ever come up with in the past. This is still the same layout that is used today for over 102 train lines. I always like that fact. I think it's a really, really neat one. Okay, so first off, let's go over the history of psychedelic mushrooms. There are theories that mushrooms have been used by humanoids since the brain started developing, since 7,000 to 9,000 BCE, from cave drawings that were found in Africa. Egyptian hieroglyphs also have mushroom drawings from ancient times, and they were seen as a golden plant with magical properties. There are also mushroom headstones from Mesoamerica that go back as far as 3,000 BCE. And many different regions from all over the globe have these different depictions. The study of this history is actually called ethnomycology. And for thousands of years, they were known to be used in religious rituals and shamanic journeys because of their healing and spiritual properties. By the mid 1500s, though, Europeans had already started to settle in Mesoamerica and they were outlawing mushrooms. So by the 1500s, they already started putting mushroom growth and sale on the black market. And in 1955, Robert and Valentina Wasson traveled to Huautla de Jimenez, Oaxaca, Mexico, to meet with Maria Sabina, and they wanted to partake in a traditional Mazatec healing ceremony that uses psilocybin to experience enlightenment. However, this ended up having Maria Sabina run out of town because of all the different tourists that were coming to see her and basically whitewashing this entire experience. When that happened, that she ended up getting run out of town, she expressed that the psychedelics were tainted and ruined. And she also expressed that she wasn't able to communicate with the mushrooms the same nor heal people the same after all of this. In continuation, in 1963, American scientists found out how to isolate the compound of psilocybin from the mushroom. However, by 1968, all of the usage of psychedelics were put to a halt, and Nixon started the war on drugs in 1971. At this time, many were actively using psychedelics in society, but once the war on drugs started, there was a lot of propaganda that was released that mentioned that people might jump out of windows or they might hurt others because of the psychedelic usage. Also, the war on drugs started when people were protesting Vietnam War and they were fighting for rights for black citizens. Keep in mind, Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination was in the spring or in April of 1968, which was only a few months before Nixon went into office. And it really makes you wonder whether or not the war on drugs is connected to people waking up and wanting to start or stop the war and fight for equal rights. Anyways, Terence McKenna came out with a theory in 1992 that psychedelic mushrooms helped with the expedition of evolution and cognitive functioning from the ape to humanity that we have today. This is called the quote unquote stoned ape theory, which is something that I heard about a while ago. And it's always intrigued me. So I'm glad that I got to kind of look into it a bit further. But basically, it's the understanding that apes started eating mushrooms, and that basically led to the evolution of how humanity came to be. And in 2010, a body of a woman from 19,000 years ago was discovered. And upon closer inspection to her teeth, there were spores of Amanita muscaria found. Muscaria. Sorry, muscaria. This is the traditional psychedelic mushroom that we see now. It's the red one with the white dots. Now, this is an interesting fact. In old Siberian culture, it is said that those who used to partake in magic mushrooms would drink the urine of reindeer, as the psychoactive properties are still pertinent in the urine and have had all of the poison filter out through the reindeer, which made it safe to drink. There's also the belief that Christmas actually started from a lot of mushroom propaganda in like a good way. And I'm not going to go through that entire theory because it's kind of long and convoluted, but basically it's like the red and green and him being so jolly, and then reindeer and them drinking the reindeer pee. And then whenever you look at like Siberian's mushroom illustration, or not mushroom illustration, whenever you look at like Siberian Christmas, like the old school kind of stuff, you'll see that there's like a lot of like mushroom kind of illustrations in it, and then it's actually been pushed out by a lot of media now, or even in the past. It was just something that was more normalized. So, like I said, I'm not going to go into that entire spiel because that was just kind of a weird rabbit hole to go down. But if you want to look into it, I think Terence McKenna is the one who was talking about that. I could be wrong though, but yeah, the whole reindeer pee and then mushrooms and Christmas. Anyways, I forgot what else the other connections were. It was very convoluted. Moving forward. It is also said or believed that mushrooms might have been the food of the gods, called quote unquote soma from Vedic texts, and that the tree that Buddha sat under might have actually been a mushroom because the depiction of it is so similar to the description of a mushroom. Also, most that take mushrooms reach the same kind of enlightenment that Buddha explained and elaborated on, but his whole thing was more focused on the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And he explained that this cycle is something that happens not only on the physical plane, but also on the spiritual plane, which is the wheel of life, which is samsara, which I spoke about in the previous episode. So if you want to learn more about that, feel free to go and listen to the reincarnation episode. The Tibetans also have a similar understanding in the Book of the Dead, as the Book of the Dead actually might be just a guide on how to use psychedelics properly. I personally haven't read it. This is just from the research that I did. But some believe that they're actually just discussing the ego death, and that's what that means. And also, some believe that the tree of life might just be a magic mushroom, which is something interesting because that went through my head as well. But I feel like that would be more the tree of knowledge, not really the tree of life. And something that I find interesting is that it's a popular belief that the tree of life, or not the tree of life, but the tree of knowledge that like Adam and Eve were said to eat from, um, that was said to be an apple, but nowhere does it actually state that that's an apple. And also, I find it very interesting that Eve got, blamed for all of that whenever it's called an Adam's apple. I think about that a lot. All right. So, moving forward to any hope for psychedelic assisted therapy, I felt like this was really important to talk about because in my final semester of college, as I've explained previously, most of my research was just focused on psychedelic assisted therapy. And I actually was very interested by what I found. Ketamine, I wasn't as like intrigued by, just from the research that I did. But MDMA, that was actually one that really surprised me. And of course, m- psychedelic mushrooms were very helpful, especially with depression. So I'm very happy that they're decriminalized now in Denver, and that further, jurisdiction is being set on them. Hopefully, they're going to be legalized soon. I know that that's in the works. So, in 2022, Johns Hopkins, Yale and New York University received a $900,000 grant from the Hefter Research Institute to research the use of psychedelics in therapy using an evidence based approach. And as of October, 122 clinical trials are posted for the studies involving psilocybin as a treatment for multiple conditions, ranging from depression, PTSD, cardiac repolarization, OCD, Parkinson's disease, cancer, alcoholism, and more. Personally, I've used it for PTSD and alcoholism in terms of my own microdosing, which has been extremely helpful. But I remember that one of the stories that I ended up reading, I think it was about MDMA. And it wasn't a story that I read, it was a TED talk that I ended up researching and like reading for one of my presentations. Um, I think it was MDMA. It might have been, no, I think it was MDMA. It might have been psilocybin, but I'm pretty sure it was MDMA. And basically, the way that they did the treatments, I think it was in, I want to say like Switzerland or Sweden. I think it was Switzerland though. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so though. Maybe it was Norway. No, I think it was Switzerland. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. So this veteran, he ended up go to this clinical trial for, I believe it was MDMA. And he had explained that he had really struggled with anger from the war, like from this PTSD from the war. I don't like war. I think that I was talking about this with my partner last night. It's just like neither of us like war, and the fact that like all these generations are having to be passed down, like this generational trauma of going to war, and then like more you're going to war in this life after like all these different generations are already passing down the trauma of going to war and like having this PTSD. And then you wonder why all of you guys are so angry, and it's because you've been like basically conditioned to not talk about your feelings because you're from the military and just drink and drink and drink. Like I heard that alcoholism is like one of the worst conditions, or like popularized conditions with military. um, and I mean, the PTSD that comes from war, everyone knows about it. And yet it doesn't really seem like there is a solution to it. So, anyways, this guy goes, he's a veteran. He was explaining that he was extremely angry all the time, especially whenever he would drink. He would get into like these horrible bar fights, and he was angry all the time. And then he ended up going to do this trial, and he ended up releasing like all this pain and all these things that he had been like bottling up for so long. And he healed, like he by processing it and feeling the emotions and giving himself space. Basically what the MDMA did was it took down that like egotistical like wall that we have in between emotions and ourself. Because like we have our conscious mind, and then we have our subconscious mind, and there's kind of like this barrier or wall that's kind of hard to get over, whenever you've been so conditioned to keep the two separate. And so if you've been conditioned to say that like your emotions are not right, or that you shouldn't have them, then the barrier or the wall becomes a lot thicker. And so what I love about them is that they break that wall down, and they make it a lot easier to be able to get in touch with your emotions and process things. And so he ended up processing a lot and realizing a lot about himself, and realizing that he wasn't happy and the changes that he had to make. And he ended up coming out of it a completely different person, and ended up becoming a philanthropist. And I think he does work in like Ethiopia now or something like that, and works with kids and just like shares the love that he has. So I think that's really cool. And I've definitely seen a lot of good things from it. Ketamine, I was a little bit more, I don't know, concerned about, just because it seemed to be kind of a hit or a miss. I'd have to do more like research on that. But I know that it's a tranquilizer, so it ends up making you tired for like days and days whenever you're in the treatments. And then basically, people make progress, 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 and then it kind of plateaus after like the third session. Or maybe it was the sixth session, but I'm pretty sure it was the third one. And then after that, they didn't really see any variation in like helpfulness. But they put that one out as like the first psychedelic therapy, right? Especially in Denver. And it just upset me so much because I'm like, this is not a psychedelic. This is a dissociative. There is a difference. Okay. I'm gonna move away from that topic. Because they're not the same, but whatever. Anyways, okay. So along with an increase in research, several cities in select states, California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Massachusetts, Michigan, Oregon, and Washington have either deprioritized or decriminalized the status of psilocybin. Over 50 publicly held companies started developing psychedelic products for medical application as of 2021. And with grants, research, and legalization on the rise, we look to a promising future of psychedelic application. Recent research applying psilocybin to aid with the depression and PTSD has provided hope for alleviation. New knowledge brings new understanding, which may help to alleviate mycophobia, which is the fear of mushrooms, and bring about more mycophiles, which are mushroom loving people. A growing fungal community and a network has the potential to create a plethora of new connections, just like a hyphal tip reaching out to explore a vast new territory. And if you don't know about it, there's actually like mushroom churches that you just go and like listen to. I think it's like synthesizers and just like take mushrooms and it's a good time. I could be wrong, but I've heard about this and I'm like, I would like to do that. But I'm a big mushroom lover. And whether it just be regular food or whether it be psychedelics, I love them so so much. I think they have so much to teach us. So they're like, we can't tell you, so we'll just show you. And they give you a little download in your pineal gland. So how can mushrooms help our brains? Studies show that psychedelics could be really helpful in the clinical counseling field to further advancements. Some great books that you can read on it, or you can watch the Netflix series is called How to Change Your Mind. And another great book is Psychedelic Medicine. It's interesting because prior to 1950, we were trying all these like different alternative medicines or testing out one medicine for another treatment to see whether or not it would work. But after a while, we just kind of stopped. And so now we have all these suppressive tactics. Like they're like band aids for gaping wounds that treat the symptoms of these, illnesses, but they don't actually treat the root of the problem for mental health in particular. Because I know personally, maybe I shouldn't say that on air, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyways. There's a difference between healthcare and sick care, and I'll leave that at that. So I was really excited to dive more into psychedelic research because I am a big proponent for mushrooms in particular. They have really helped me in so many ways, whether it be through microdosing or through larger trips. And they have also taught me a lot and reminded me that it is okay to feel my emotions because it is all part of the human experience. A big thing that they are helpful for is with neuroplasticity of the brain. So if you don't know what neuroplasticity is, I can explain it. Basically, and I think I've explained this in a previous episode, but basically we all have like neural pathways, right? And I like to compare the neural pathways to train tracks. And when we were children, we had a lot more unused train tracks. They hadn't been constructed in any certain particular path, which means that children have more neuroplasticity. Okay, are you with me? Okay, so neural pathways equals train tracks. Okay, kids have a lot more train tracks available because they haven't used them for anything or assigned them for anything. But as we get older, we start to use these train tracks more and more, and we start to construct where these neural pathways go. We assign them where they're supposed to go. So, for example, if you touch a hot stove as a kid and burn your hand, then whenever you're older, you will have that pathway set up already, knowing and understanding that if you touch a hot stove, it's going to burn you. Okay, that neural pathway, that train track has already been set up. Now, as we get older, these neural pathways are so built up and pre designed that it is rare that we will do the construction on them. Therefore, we have less neuroplasticity. And it's kind of like that phrase, like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Or if you have less neuroplasticity, it might be harder to learn new things like languages as you get older. And that's another reason why it's so difficult at first to be able to reprogram your brain with affirmations and such as you get older, because the train track is so ingrained and so overused that it is difficult to even consider doing construction on it. However, what they found out is that psilocybin mushrooms is actually able to help bring in more neuroplasticity. So it's a lot of ways that they can help regrow and rebuild our brains, because they're able to bring in these new train tracks and be like, hey, you should do construction on this train track or this neural pathway. And it helps to grow the brain in a way. Now, what can mushrooms really teach us? Here's some things that they've shown me. They remind us that we're all one, and they show that evolution and religion go hand in hand. They have been here so much longer than the rest of us, and they have also shown me that things that I needed to put down because they were too much, like they were so heavy, they were way heavier than I thought they were, and they kind of helped hold my hand in a way as I let go of pain that I've been carrying for a very, very long time. They also showed me that we all come from source energy, and that the most important thing in life is love. That is the answer to life. It is love. And that is what it all comes down to. That we all are a large child that comes from source. And that our ego is part of the triad of mind, body, and soul. Our ego does not define us, it is only a part of us. And that ego deaths, the destruction of everything that you know, is important, because that way you can actually rebuild your old thought patterns, values, morals, and waking reality. And you're letting go of the old to allow in the new. And also that we are not separate to the nature that is around us, we are all part of it. So, best advice for using mushrooms on any trip: setting, and intention. Set is your mindset whenever you walk in there. Make sure you have a good, healthy mindset before you walk in. Setting is important, where you will take them. I ended up having a friend a long time ago who said that she wanted to take them at a party for the first time. And me and my best friend at the time were like, no, no, don't, don't do that. Don't do that. Because you don't know how you're going to react to them. You don't know, like how your body is going to react to them. You don't know if you're going to purge a lot of stuff. You don't, I mean, just being at a large party with people that you don't know, with all that energy can get very overwhelming very quickly if you're tripping. Maybe after a couple times and you have like a trip sitter, if you want to do it at a party, sure. Or if you're like more advanced with them, that's different. But for your very first time with a bunch of people you don't know, no, that's not a good idea. So, what's also important is the intention, what you are trying to learn on the trip. Somebody told me a very, very long time ago, instead of just taking psychedelics, go in with something that you want to learn more about. Go in and be ready to sit with the intention that you set before you go into the mushroom trip. And usually I will journal while I'm doing mushrooms, or I'll just like talk to someone or whatever it may be, and just go through the intention, right? Because whenever you're tripping, you have like all of these different like thoughts that are coming at you. But if you just like cling on to one, then you can kind of ride it out like a roller coaster in a way and see where it takes you. And if you already have the intention of, okay, I'm going to grab onto this thought and I'm going to write it out and I'm going to let it go and purge whatever I need to purge and learn what I need to learn, then it can be extremely helpful. So, yeah, I think those are the main three things that are important for any mushroom trip. So my personal mushroom trips. Let's see. I used to use microdosing, or I used to use mushrooms for microdosing. Now that I've been starting my mood stabilizers, I have been not doing that just because I want to make sure that I'm like not messing with the medication that I'm just starting out. And I'd like to do more research on how those two things will interact prior to me microdosing alongside using any medications, just so that way I can make sure that I'm being safe about it. I have used them for many larger trips, as I have explained. Um, and I've worked through an immense amount of my trauma. I've had extremely intense trips. One of them was I went to a show with one of my very good friends now, and I took quite a lot, and I ended up like processing like 18 years of trauma that I had been holding on to around like my childhood, and I was like sobbing for like hours, like just clearing it out and just letting it go. And honestly, it was the best freaking thing ever because I let go of so much. But I also ended up remembering, and this is why I say be careful of other people's energy whenever you are around them, whenever you're tripping, because you're much more sensitive. It's like your auric field is open. I ended up like helping this guy who leaned over the rail while he was throwing up. And I like went to go like pat his back and be like, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, do you need water?" And I remember this so vividly, and it still like makes my like back shiver a bit. But the guy turned to me, and he didn't have like a face. It was just like, the Dementors from Harry Potter. It was just that. Like he like sucked the life, like the energy out of me. And it was like, I've never in my life have experienced something like that. But it was like I came face to face with this Dementor, but like in real life, and he looked at me and like sucked the life out of me, because I could tell like with him being as sick as he was, in a way he was like he had alcohol poisoning, so like he was dying, right? So he ended up like sucking the life force out of me, and I was standing on a bench, and because he was like leaned over this rail, and I almost like passed out and fell backwards, but I was able to like grip onto the railing and like sit down. But yeah, I almost like fell down off this bench and like cracked my skull on the concrete. So that was that's what I mean whenever I say like be careful about like setting, because that was scary. um Other things, I mean, one of the last trips that I ended up taking was that I ended up opening up a vault. I ended up taking too many mushrooms, and I was like, "Oh, I can do this. I can do this." No, I wasn't ready. And I went to Foam Wonderland, and then I almost had like an ego death in the pit. And so we had to leave, and I ended up going outside and like seeing the spinning fractals and pinwheels like in the wall. And I was like, oh, no, 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 we need to go home. And keep in mind, like where we were, it was like over an hour from like where we lived. And my best friend was in town, and I felt so bad because I was like way too up there. And I ended up having an ego death on the way home. And whenever I got home, I ended up I ended up opening a vault in my mind about my sexual trauma. And that really started the, I guess like the start of like me working through all of that, because I've been working on that for the past like 2.5 years now. But basically, like the mushrooms were like, you're ready to finally deal with this. Like it's time that you deal with this. And as unpleasant as it is, it's important that you like cry about this and like work through this blockage, which I didn't get to clear the blockage fully that time, which was really horrible, not super fun. But um, I've been working on that for a couple years now, and it has been a journey with EMDR, but it has been extremely helpful, and I've been regaining my power back a lot. Um, so yeah, You never know what the mushrooms are going to show you. I've also just had like fun trips. I was kind of doing them a little bit too much for a while. Um, but yeah, I just love them. I like them a lot more than I like LSD, for example, because it's only like a 6 to 8 hour trip versus like a 12 to 14 hour trip or 10 to 12 hour trip. Um, and also, I ended up, I remember that one night where the whole Dementor thing happened and I processed all that stuff. Me and my best friend now, like my good friend now, we ended up like having the best freaking night of our life. Like we realized how many synchronicities had to like come together for us to like meet and live together and like be in that moment at that exact time, and how like everything had aligned for us to meet, and all like these little synchronicities were like going on, and like it was just the best thing ever. And I just remember that night being so much fun, and it was just so crazy. And like we still like laugh about it to this day, of just like, oh my gosh, like I think about that night, and like it was just such a crazy night. um so yeah. um I have more trips than that, but I think that's all I want to share for today. And as I close up, what I'm grateful for this week is that I've had time to work on music and this podcast, and I'm thankful that I have the equipment to do that. Also, having clean water, or any water at all, and having warm water. And then I'm also grateful because I was able to hike with my coworker yesterday, which was super fun. And then I was able to have lunch with my other coworker today. And I also met a new friend at a drumming circle. So that was awesome. And now that no, drumming circles are on Thursday, I feel like I'm a day ahead. It's very annoying. I'm also thankful that I have clean air in my lungs and that I'm able to breathe on my own, and that it's been beautiful, beautiful weather outside. So I'm super thankful for that. And the two songs that I have this week are Shadow Self by LS Dream and Monday, Monday, Monday by Tegan and Sarah, which is, I used to love Tegan and Sarah whenever I was a young preteen, and I still love their old stuff. So, yeah, thank you for listening. And I hope this has been informative and that you've enjoyed it. And I will see you next week.